In this debate on wages, essentially Venezuelan economist Luis Salas argues that Palusquino Curico, as stated in another work, that if there is to be a recovery of wages in Venezuelan workers, there must be a switch to a progressive tax reform. Others say that no such thing can be done while the U.S. blockade against Venezuela by the imperialist powers still exists. Wages, pensions, and wealth creation simply can't proceed. This, of course, is a justification for abandoning the Bolivarian Revolution without much actual economic argumentation. Now, often it has been repeated previously that the former wages of 400 USD a month at the end of 2012 were only possible due to a higher price of oil. Now, this was echoed by Chomsky as well as myself. Now, according to some economic work, that isn't possible. Annual oil barrel price during the Chavez era was $53, sometimes decreasing to $20. If this statement is true, then how do other Latin American countries provide a minimum wage of 330 US dollars? Many of their GDPs don't even include oil. Guatemala has a monthly minimum wage of $380. Salas agrees with Curco that an increase in wages should come from a more equitable distribution of wealth via a Nordic-style taxation system. The question for him is knowing as if they're in a position or not to do so, and if not, when. What's interesting to me here is that Salas agrees that Venezuela is not socialist in this particular line. Ideally, higher wages should be paid through a more equitable distribution of wealth, which, in the absence of reforming property relations, i.e., a revolution, is achieved through taxation, as is the classic case of the Nordic countries. Salas's criticism here, apart from those of vulgar monetarism, is that there is no time to wait for ideal conditions. Something has to happen, and it has to happen now. The monthly minimum wage is below $4 and pensions $2. He calls it the most severe contraction seen in the last 100 years of our history. The situation is projected to get much worse. Reliable data from the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean says that the economy will contract by 26% as compared to 2019. This is 9.1 times the contraction expected across Latin America, twice as bad as the next country, Peru, at 13%. It is also 5.3 times worse than the contraction of the entire global economy, 4.9%. The Venezuelan economy is now one-third the size it was in 2012-2013. Add on top of this the COVID-19 pandemic, which is forcing increasing numbers of restricted labor activities. The solution to this, according to Salas, which I personally don't agree with, is to simply keep wages up by printing more money. Specifically, he says, to claim that Venezuelan state cannot pay better wages to its workers and pensioners because of the blockade has cut off foreign currency is only a half-truth. Wages are paid in bolivars, not in foreign currency. States with monetary sovereignty can do something, the rest of us cannot. Print their own money. That is the reason why, and by definition, states can never go bankrupt. Salas has pointed out that central banks around the world have increased their money supply by 10% in unbacked money in order to finance society, business, and households. This has been particularly necessary in the healthcare sector. He states that this is not what Venezuela has done thus far. In the case of Venezuela, not only has it not happened, but the opposite is true. The Venezuelan state has not one but two sovereign currencies and a central bank. It can always be said that there are the homeland card bonuses, but in substance, and the best case scenario, the amounts of directly allocated bonuses, totaling several bonuses for members of the same family, amounts to about $15 US per month. That is almost nothing, taking into account current prices. He says we should reject the idea that the government is broke and cannot pay better wages because it has no income sources. In part 2 of the source documents, he makes a considerable argument as to why this would not lead to inflation. For brevity, I've not included it here, but it is definitely worth checking out. Now, in regards to just printing more money in Venezuela, Salas reminds us that it is much more complicated in the country due to its unique economic conditions. It is important to notice that while the United States and Argentina's strong monetary emission not only did not generate inflation, but generated price drops instead. In Venezuela, inflation tends to go above emission levels. Let us look at 2019 as an example. So, the last year the central bank began a major monetary contraction. The annual monetary liquidity growth, M2, was around 4,995%. That is astronomical. During that same period, inflation was double the normal amount, 1.9 times. In this case, inflation was 2.05 times higher than monetary emission. The thing is that the monetary topic regarding wages, prices, production, and consumption is much more complex than what the current monetarist consensus between the two sides claims. This would surely not be a problem if it were only a theoretical debate, but it begins to matter when the theoretical debate becomes misdiagnosed, and that the practical consequences of the economy and on the lives of people. We have suffered enough from that, and that with one of these options we are going to kill the patient and there's nothing more to do afterwards. Thus, he argues, the simple printing of money would go the opposite as is commonly believed. But personally, I'm not so convinced.
Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.